Hello, I'm Emily, the MajorTim.space Young Ambassador Program mentor. I'm here with Florence.
Hi, I'm Florence Dowrick, a MajorTim.space Honorary Young Ambassador.
And Graeme Hall, the Dogfather from the TV show Dogs Behaving Very Badly. Could you please introduce yourself, Graeme?
Well, I think he just did. So I'm Graeme Hall, presenter of Dogs Behaving Very Badly on the telly. I'm a professional dog trainer as of many years and all of that stuff. So and I've written a couple of books. I'm writing a third one at the minute. And I've done a podcast and all those bits and pieces. So that's me.
All right, then I'll get into my first question. I prepared like a little document with all my questions on it, so I have to open it. Sorry about that.
Very organised, yeah. So what are you doing now? Whereabouts are you both from?
I'm in Wales, and yeah.
Whereabouts in Wales?
North Wales. Do you know Conway?
I do, yeah, I know it, yeah. Lovely area around there, Monadal. So that's about as much Welsh as I know, I'm afraid, but at least I made the effort. Yeah. And Florence, where are you from?
I'm from Liverpool. I'm in my dad's study right now using his computer. Yeah,
right, great, okay. Whereabouts in Liverpool?
Oral Park, if you know that. We're literally just next to the bus station and the train station. We've got our transport maximised.
That's handy, isn't it? Oral Park, famous for rugby, I think. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, we were filming for Dogs Behaving Very Badly. Well, they said Liverpool. It wasn't really. It was St Helens. But you know, to people who organise these things in London, they don't really know the difference. So there we go.
I saw on your website. I mentioned that you were no longer taking private sessions because you were filming, and I was just wondering, what is the process of getting in contact with people that like need help but also are going to be appearing on the show?
On the show, yeah. There's a whole process that they go through when they're trying to find the right people for the show, and it's called casting. So so there's a whole team of casting people and a casting producer, would you believe? So if you want to apply to the show, the easiest way to do it is to email, and the email address is dogs@avalonuk.com. So dogs@avalonuk.com. And what you do is you put in as much information about you know, your dog, obviously, your problem that you're having, and anything that, you know, is described as the backstory. So for example, it might be, oh, we've got a Romanian rescue dog, and you know, she was found on the streets of Romania fending for herself, and we've taken her in, but now she's scared of strangers or something like that. So a little bit of the story behind your problem is always good to know, you know. Sometimes they're really emotional things, like you know, we had an elderly friend who was very poorly, and she asked us to sort of promise that when she died that we would take the dog on, and we promised to always look after the dog, but now we're having a problem, you know. So yeah, and I think it's those human stories that are behind the dog problems that really make the show. So yes, if you are interested, yeah, do get in touch. Thousands of people do, I've got to say. I haven't asked them this year, but last year, about halfway through the production of it, I asked how many people had emailed, and it was over 10,000 emails. I know. So at their end, what they do is they read through them, and if it looks like it could be kind of interesting, let's face it, if the behaviour is bad enough, because they don't call it dogs behaving very badly for nothing. So if it's the dog that's behaving very slightly badly, that's probably not going to make it. They go through those. They then maybe phone somebody up, have a little chat to them on the phone. If they think, yep, this sounds likely, then typically they'll arrange a Zoom call or something similar like Skype. And there's two things there. Sometimes they might use some of that footage on the telly, although it's rare, but it gives them a feel for what people might be like on camera. Because there's lots of people who've got a really genuine problem, but actually, if they're really, really nervous, perhaps on camera, it's probably not going to work, sadly. So the next stage is they'll send what they call a recce crew out. So that's a little team, usually 1 or 2 people, and they'll go to the house and they'll film some of the dog behaviour and the backstory. Now, that footage usually does make it to the telly, but the main purpose of that visit is to create some footage that the producers and the people at Channel 5 can see. And then they'll say yes or no, basically. It's only at that stage, interestingly, that I then get involved. So I don't choose any of the dogs. So they literally will say to me, right, next week, this is where you're going, what you're doing. In fact, as we speak on a Sunday, I still don't know exactly what I'm doing next week. I know there's one job I'm going to go see somebody with a Rottweiler with a problem, but I don't know what the problem is. I haven't even seen a video of it yet, but that's because I was on holiday last week. So it's just at the very end where it's like, right, there you go, Graeme, that's your problem. Off you go, fix that. So, so that's the way it works.
Does it ever feel like you don't have enough time to like prepare to like figure out what kind of solution you need to create for the?
Yeah, it often does. I mean, so typically what will happen is the director who's going to be there filming on the day will get in touch and say, right, okay, this is what we got, Graeme. There's a little video. He'll probably email me that, he or she, and then they'll send me a like a 1-page summary of the problem. So usually looking at the video, I got a pretty good idea of what's going on, but sometimes not. So, and you've always got to keep an open mind. So, and I think this is a good lesson in life, you know, don't be too planned and too prepared sometimes, because you've got to keep an open mind. Things can change, can't they? So, so we'll go into a shoot thinking, okay, I know what the problem is with this dog, and I think I know what we're going to be doing in training. Sometimes it's like, yep, just as a thought, yep, okay, fine, we'll go with the plan. Other times it's like, do you know everything I told you last week? Forget that. It's not that at all, because now I'm here and I've seen it. It's all completely different. So, and the television people hate that, of course, because they like to know what they're doing. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, sorry guys, but forget that. It's all changed. But I'm going to do the right thing for the dog, you know. So the point is, it's not scripted, you know.
Yeah, you can't do something that you know is wrong because there's no point in it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So you got to do the right thing, and I think, you know, there's a bit of a life lesson there. Is life's not scripted, is it? So sometimes you think you've got a plan, but actually you've got to modify it as it goes along. You know, that's life, isn't it?
Did you personally have any dogs growing up?
Good question, Florence. No, I didn't. So you guys have got a head start on me, actually, because you both got dogs at your age. So no, the story in our house was my mum and dad were both working people. My dad worked in a sugar factory, he was an electrician. My mum was the local swimming teacher at the swimming pool. And they were very busy. So my sister and I were always saying, God, please can we have a dog? Can we have a dog? And it was always, no, because we're too busy and a lot of the time we're not here and it won't be fair on the dog, you know. And my dad always said as well, oh, it's just too upsetting when they go, you know, which it is, of course. So we weren't allowed pets, really, for that reason. And then I went off to university, came out, and the first dog I lived with was my girlfriend's dog. So she had a poodle called Noodle. And so that the dog was named by the 6-year-old daughter, by the way. So Noodle the poodle. He lived to a ripe old age. But the first dogs of my own, Florence, were 2 Rottweilers that I got, and I was about 40. So I was quite late to this. But I always say it did mean that I came to it with sort of fresh eyes, you know. In other words, you know, I had no preconceptions of what it was like. So I'd already learned a little bit about how the world works, I suppose, at 40, and then there I was with dogs. So yeah. So no, surprisingly, we didn't have dogs as a child.
Florence,
So,
you can ask another question if you would like to.
yeah, go on.
When did you kind of get the idea that you were going to be a dog trainer? When did you fix yourself on that?
Yeah, good point. Good question. Well, I put it this way: if you'd have said to me when I was your age, you're going to be a professional dog trainer, I'd have been a bit surprised. So I went off to uni and did a degree in Hispanic Studies, which is basically Spanish language and some literature as well. So, and I still speak Spanish. I then left and I went to work for Weetabix Limited for 21 years, right? So I made your breakfast for 20 years. And I was basically running the factories there. So I worked my way up from, me and a team of 5 people to running some really big factories. So I then left because I wanted to change and I was going to do something very different. I was actually going to be a management consultant, which is basically a job where you go into businesses and help people to run their business a bit better. And I'd seen people do that at Weetabix, so I thought I could do that. But I took 3 months off. And during that time, I got those Rottweilers that I mentioned, Florence. So what I did was I really got into training them, because I thought big, powerful dogs, they've got to be really, really good, I don't want anybody to be scared or intimidated by them, so they've got to be brilliant. And the guy who was the head trainer at the club that I went to, and I spent loads of time trying to learn from him, he said, why don't you be a dog trainer? And I just hadn't thought of that. So I said to him, why do you think I should be a dog trainer? And what he said next kind of changed my life. He said, well, you're good with people and you're good at explaining things. And I said, well, what about dogs? You're going to be good with dogs, aren't you? And he went, no, you're good with dogs. Well, a lot of people are. But some people who are good with dogs aren't necessarily good with people as well. So you need both of those things, So that was it. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. And I thought, I'll give it a year. If it's working, great. If it's not, I can always go back to the original plan. And that year was 2008. And I'm still going now. So so far, it's worked quite well.
Is there any qualifications that you needed to get to become a dog trainer?
No, interestingly, there aren't. There are also qualifications that you could choose to do, up to and including even a master's degree. I started with a correspondence course and read a lot around it, and then sort of went from there. So I always think qualifications they're an entry to something. It's what qualifies you to get going. But that same dog trainer, who was a brilliant dog trainer, but he wasn't academically clever. I don't know how he'd done at school, but he wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm an academic genius" at all. But he was brilliant with dogs. That was his thing. He was really, really skilled. And he just said to me, "Look, what's really important, because you can learn lots of things from books, of course you can, and online, and I'm constantly reading studies now of things that are happening and keeping up to date. But he said, actually, the biggest deal is how many dogs you've had through your hands," was his phrase, So experience counts for a lot. So that's really what I got stuck into doing. So I think there's lots of different routes to answer your question, Emily. You could go down that qualification route, and that's a very sound way to start. I think that's absolutely fine. But you need the experience if you're going to do that. So it's a start point. So a good way to think of qualifications, perhaps, is a bit like Formula One when you see that on the telly. Before the race, there's qualifying, and that decides who starts in first position, all the rest of it. So that ain't the race. That's just qualifying. So once you're qualified, then you need to get in the race. So I guess what I'm saying is, in life generally, I think experience counts for a lot. Yeah.
Do you think there should be more regulations on becoming a dog trainer to prevent people from bringing or teaching wrong things to people and actually harming dogs more than helping them?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. I think they perhaps should, because anybody can call themselves a dog trainer tomorrow, and that's the problem. So you can know absolutely nothing and perhaps not be a very nice person even, and just get stuck in and call yourself a dog trainer. So that is a bit of a problem, but I think there are a lot of things like that. So yes, I think regulation would be a good thing. The question, of course, is who's going to do that regulating? Because there's lots of different ways of doing dog training, and I've always said, look, I've got my style, it works for me, and you can see what I do on the telly, other people got different ways of doing it, and I never say they're wrong and I'm right. Some people, by the way, say I'm wrong. You see it on social media all the time. But I just go, look, you know what? We've all got our own ways of doing things, so we should live and let live. So the question about regulation, of course, is who would set the agenda, who would decide, what the right way is of doing it. So there's a joke about dog trainers, which is if you put 3 dog trainers in a room together, the only thing that 2 will ever agree on is that the third person is wrong. So I wouldn't want to be on the committee that chooses who's doing the regulation. I think it could be a very long, drawn-out conversation, that.
How did you get the nickname the Dogfather? Like, when did it first start?
Yeah, very good question. Well, I decided I was going to be a dog trainer, and decided I probably needed a website to do that, so that people would know what I was doing. And I thought I need a catchy name, because you can call yourself Graeme Hall Dog Trainer or Florence Dowrick Dog Trainer, but people kind of forget your name really initially. So I thought I need something catchy, something memorable, And I was sat in the car about to walk the dogs at the local beauty spot, and this car pulled up, and it was an estate car, and on the panel at the back, the window at the back of the car, it said in 2 separate words, or 3 words, the dog mother. And it was a lady who it was a dog walker, actually, not a trainer. And I think she looked after dogs in her own home, so she was called the dog mother. And I thought, the dog mother, that sounds like godmother. But I thought that only works if it's one word. So I just, there and then I thought, dog mother, Dogfather, one word, so hence the joke with Godfather. So that was it really. I thought, well, I'll do that. And then I went home to see if it was possible to get the website, dogfather.co.uk. It wasn't at the time, but it subsequently became available. So then people just got the hang of calling me that. But the reason I like it is it's just a bit of fun, really. And there's a lot of real serious people in dog training, it seems to me. And if we can do the job right and have a bit of fun along the way, well, it's not a bad thing, is it? So that was the thinking.
I don't know why, but somehow I thought it was named after the movie The Godfather. But I don't know where I got that impression from.
Well, you're not entirely wrong. Because that's the joke, you see, Emily. So that's the pun. So the Godfather, the Dogfather, but maybe not quite as serious and scary as a mob gangster. So yeah, and that actually, just out of interest, the Godfather comes from the Italian Il Padrino. I think that was the name for the mafia bosses in New York. But so yeah, not that scary. Their catchphrase was "We'll make you an offer you can't refuse," and so on my first website, I had that on the front page. Give us a ring, and we'll make you an offer you can't refuse. But I changed it because I didn't want to sound like aggressive, really. So yeah,
you're like training the dogs to attack.
Yeah, well, yeah, we wouldn't be doing that. So, quite the opposite, actually. So yeah, there you
go. Have you ever been attacked by dogs whilst filming or training, and how do you kind of de-escalate the situation?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the worst one was away from the telly, doing a private one-to-one. Went to see somebody who had a German Shepherd. They'd had it for about a week. He was a rescue dog, and he was out in the back garden barking, and he sounded pretty aggressive. But I thought, well, there comes a point where you've got to meet the dog. I can't just do dog training from a distance and, get bark orders out through the window. That would be cheating, wouldn't it? So what I did was I got the guy to make sure the dog was on lead. He didn't have a muzzle. And that was a lesson that I learned, really. If there's a chance that the dog's going to be aggressive, safety first, use the muzzle, vets would. But they didn't have one. I thought, what am I going to do? I'm here now. So I said, right, put him on lead. And they brought him into the kitchen, which was quite small, really, and not much room for the dog to give himself a bit of space. And as soon as he came in, literally within 3 seconds, he bit my hand, this hand here. And I don't think you really quite see it there, but there's a scar around there. Because he, without giving you too much detail, he sort of bit into that and made a bit of a mess of it. So the problem was, as soon as he bit into it, the man then reacted just a second too late and went, oh, and pulled back on the lead. And of course, his tooth then could have ripped out my hand. So that wasn't very good. I had to have a little operation because of that. So that was very serious. I learned from that, and so if there's any hint that there could be anything like that, it's muzzle on to start with. We can always take it off later. On screen, yeah, I've had dogs sort of jump at me, and in the series that we're producing at the moment, it's not out yet. It'll be early 2024 when it comes out. There's a big Doberman that sort of jumped at me back and managed to rip my jacket, one of my favourite tweed jackets as well. So to answer the second part of your question, how do you de-escalate it? It's very difficult to give sort of definitive advice, but what you don't do is panic, right? And the more you panic and scream and shout and move your arms around, the worse it gets usually, because you're getting excited, then the dog gets more excited, and it just does this. If that makes sense. So in that particular case, it was a case of sort of pretty much standing still, like no, and just waiting for him to sort of back down. Now, here's the hardest thing: when they do back down, inside, because we're human, inside we're just thinking, and I'm thinking, I'm sure you've just ripped my jacket, and I like this jacket. But on the outside, as soon as he stops, he's now being a good boy, isn't he? Yeah. So the right thing to do is to praise him for now calming down. So what you've got to do is you go from point no to, oh, good boy, that's fine, Of course, inside you're thinking, yeah. But on the outside, because he's a dog, you've got to go, right, I'm calming down, and I want you to know that calming down is good. So I've got to rise above my own emotions a little bit and say, oh, good lad, that's fine. So that's the answer to your question, Emily. It's when you've got a dog in full-on attack mode, it's really hard to give good advice about exactly what you could do to de-escalate. It's a bit like asking a policeman, what do you do if you've got a man coming at you with a knife? It's like, blimey, there's no simple answer to that. But in general terms, try and keep yourself calm if you can. Slow things down. Don't panic and scream and shout, because that usually makes it worse. And you know what? That's probably the same with people as it is with aggressive dogs. There you go. So yeah, Florence.
Can you remember the first dog that you helped, or what's the first dog that you remember that you helped?
Well, that's a really good question. I can. So professionally, we got that website, and it was called Dogfather Training at the time. And my phone number wasn't right. Nothing happened for a week, and then one night the phone rang, and somebody said, "Hello, is that the dog trainer?" And I went, yes, it is. Hello, how can I help? And they had a German Shepherd dog who was quite young, and it was a really sweet dog. Lived in a small house in Northampton where I lived at the time, and the problem was that it was, from memory, about 8-9 months old, and was still going to the toilet in the house. So in the night, it was popping downstairs and hiding around the back of the sofa and doing a poo basically in the house. So that was my first one. What I discovered was happening was, in the morning, the people would get up and they'd find it. They'd come downstairs, you can imagine, can't they? They walk downstairs and go, oh God, blimey, and then they found it, and then they've told the dog off. So it's like, no, he's very naughty, you mustn't do that. And that was the biggest mistake they were making, because dogs don't understand when we're telling them off now for something that happened, well, let's face it, maybe 4 or 5 hours ago. They don't make the connection between the two things, you see. Now we do because we're human, so we understand language. So, Florence, for example, your mum and dad could come in and say, "Look, we asked you to tidy your room, you haven't. You're very naughty, and now you're in trouble, right?" And you would go, "Yeah, okay, I'm in trouble because of something I didn't do hours ago that I promised." Yeah, and because of language, we understand we're being told off now for something that happened in the past. Yeah, easy if you're human, but not if you're a dog. Because the dog is hearing blah, blah, blah. So they've come down in the morning. The dog's completely forgotten about what it did in the middle of the night now. It's moved on to the next thing. It's daylight. It's like, right, where's my breakfast? So probably sat there all sweetly going, oh, hello, wagging his tail, her tail actually. Right, wagging her tail, hello, hello, hello. And then they come down with a face like, you're a very naughty dog. And all the dog's hearing is blah, blah, blah. Because they don't understand most of the language, just keywords. Good boy, maybe bad boy, good girl. So it's like, blah, 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 blah. And the dog's like, what's going on with you? Right? So clearly in the end, the dog's just getting more and more confused. It's like in the morning when they come down, they're very angry. And then people will be pointing at the poo. So it's like, it's something to do with this. And it makes the problem worse because the dog gets more and more anxious. And the dog doesn't understand what's going on, but it's something to do with poo. So then they hide it. So they maybe hide it around the back of the sofa or
oh no.
Because the poor little dog's thinking, if I do this, I'm going to be in trouble. And what they haven't understood is all I have to do is maybe wake him up or wait till the morning and go outside. Because the other thing is probably the dog's never been praised for doing it in the garden. So the dog's like, well, I don't know what to do because nobody tells me what's good. All I know is they all just get really upset and I don't understand what I've done, So I help them, Florence, to bring it back to your question by explaining that actually there is nothing you can do in that situation. Clean it up, do a good job of that, because dogs do have a habit of going back to the same spot, And then the next time your dog goes to the toilet in the garden, make sure you praise them. So the dog goes, okay, right, this is where you want me to go. Well, you only had to tell me. So I was able to explain it to them like that. So that was the very first dog, and it's a not uncommon problem, and it's a bit in it, but it was really clear to me where things had gone wrong. So I was able to help them really quite easily. There you go.
With sorry. You go. No, it's okay.
Say has been the most difficult dog breed you've had to work with their personal traits?
Yeah. Well, Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, obviously, Florence. One's called Coco, because I know that's what you've got. It's a tricky one, that, because it's a bit like saying, what kind of people are the worst behaved people, right? And we wouldn't do that, would we, these days? We wouldn't say, well, people from Liverpool are terrible people. People from Wales are good people, and people from Yorkshire, well, they're the best kind ever. Because it's not quite that simple. They've all got different traits, is the answer to that, right? So let's take a couple of examples. So, let's take King Charles Cavalier. King Charles Cavalier, bred to be companion dogs, really, cute little dogs. Go all the way back to the first King Charles, of course. Interestingly, the current King Charles III, he doesn't have spaniels. He's got Jack Russell, which I think is what you've got, Emily. So, they're usually quite snuggly little dogs, quite well behaved. They like being with people, so sometimes they suffer from separation anxiety because if the people aren't there, they really suffer from that. Whereas other dogs are more independent. They're a bit more like, I don't care whether you're here or not, frankly, it's fine by me. A bit like people, they're all different. If you take another breed like Border Collie, really that dog was bred to be on a farm, herding sheep and running around, They really, really need to be on the go all the time. They've got a really quick brain. They're like, tell me what to do. What do I do now? What do I do now? What do we do next? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Right? And if you don't give them anything to do, they go a bit stir crazy. So often those dogs can cause trouble in a house because they're not being stimulated up here. Sometimes they're not getting enough exercise. Sometimes they're not thinking enough. So to answer your question, there's no single breed that I would say that's the most difficult breed. Or the opposite's true as well. There's no single breed where I go, that is definitely the best breed. but they've all got different traits. So, I mean, a lot of my explanations involve cars because I'm into me cars. So, if you imagine a big old-fashioned Land Rover, that's really good at driving across fields, but it's not going to win any races. Whereas if you imagine a sports car, maybe like a Ferrari or something, well, that's going to be really fast on a racetrack, but it's going to be rubbish in a field. So they've all got different traits. So there you go.
You said before you can't say, like, we can't categorize people as like the worst kinds of people to work with. But what is your story of like the worst people that you have worked with? Because I imagine some people have opinions on dogs that like I have to be the alpha and like
God, yeah,
like dominate their dogs.
Yeah, you do get that. I've got to say, you don't get that so much anymore, where people want to be super bossy. What I do see is kind of the opposite, really, which is like, I don't know what to do, so don't do anything. And the dog's looking at them going, oh, go on, give us a clue. How do you want me to behave? And nobody's telling them. So, it's like, I think one of the things that gets confusing these days, and I'll come back to your actual question in a sec, Emily, is people mistake leadership with being too bossy, right? So we all know people, perhaps at school, really good teachers who take the lead in things, who say, right, today this is what we're going to do, right? Okay. And everybody goes, yeah, great. Okay, we'll follow you to the ends of the earth. Now, really good teachers, really good leaders in the world of business and that, if I often say to people, the best boss you ever worked with or the best teacher you ever had, if you think about that person, they're not somebody who was screaming and shouting and forcing everybody to do things and being horrible, because they didn't have to, did they? But I tell you what, you wouldn't want to get the other side of them either. So you just knew that you had to sort of behave. But actually, that was okay, because it was nice to be around them. That's leadership. It's creating the conditions for people to want to follow you. That's leadership, and that's the same if it's a dog. So if your dog's looking at you going, I love you, I'll do anything you say, I'll follow you to the ends of the earth, then you're on a winner. If you're trying too hard, trying to be the alpha and you've got to show him who's boss and all of that kind of stuff, it doesn't work. But to answer your question, Emily, the hardest kind of people to deal with, and this is about attitude as well, when people have got a really negative mindset, they just don't think anything's going to work. And I'll give you two examples, positive and negative, really. I went to see a guy once. I was talking about this just very recently. I went to see a chap, and it was a private one-to-one, and it was a long way away from home. It involved an overnight stay, so it was a lot of money to get me to go up there, and he had a little Jack Russell that was a bit reactive to other dogs. It's actually quite a sweet dog, and it was quite easy. So we walked around his hometown. We saw lots and lots of dogs. In the end, this little Jack Russell was brilliant. I was really pleased, Sometimes you get a dog and you think, oh, thank you. You sent me this dog down to make me look good, because it's just quite easy. Right? So gone from looking really bad to looking really good. Very pleased. So I got back to the chap's house. I said, right, brilliant. Are you happy? Yeah, great. He said, it's brilliant. Right. I said, well, we better settle up money-wise, And he said, yeah, no problem. And like I said, it was a lot of money. And he said, do you know, that was money well spent? I said, well, thank you very much. I'm glad you think of that. And then he said this. He said, I didn't think you'd do it. I said to the wife before you came, no way. There's no way it's going to work. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. You were prepared to spend a lot of money to prove to yourself that it was useless. How odd is that? Yeah, that's a really negative mindset, isn't it? Now, it works anyway, but there are times when you say to somebody, look, this is working. Oh, yeah, but I don't suppose it'll work if we try a bit harder. Then it does work. You go, I don't suppose it'll work if I have a go. Well, it will if you do what I do. And then it works. And they go, well, I don't suppose it'll work when you're not here. And I go, well, look, I'll hide behind that tree, and it works. And they go, I don't suppose it'll work tomorrow. And it's like, blimey, it's like that's pessimism to the nth degree. And you know what? If you think it's not going to work, there's a good chance it won't in the end, because you create your own reality, if that makes sense. Yeah. The opposite of that was Australia, because I was in Australia for the first 3 months of this year, filming dogs behaving very badly, Australia, right? Now, what I found out in Oz was they're really quite positive, most people. And when I sort of said to somebody, right, okay, here's what I think the problem is, and here's what I think the training should be, I almost always heard the same phrase. And the phrase was this: yeah, I'll give it a go, mate. Right? I'll give it a go. And I'm like, brilliant, because that's all I need. So if you believe, I'll give it a go. Yeah, why not? Yeah, that might work, right? I love that kind of positivity. So it's a long-winded answer to a simple question, this, Emily, but I'm going to round it off with a quote from somebody who's not me, a bit wiser than me, perhaps. Henry Ford, who was the man who first started the Ford Motor Company. He's American, and that's probably the best part of 100 years ago now. He said this: if you think you can, or you think you cannot, either way, you're right. That's good, isn't it? So if you keep telling yourself, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, do you know what? It'll be true. You won't be able to do it. And if you say to yourself, I can do this, I'll do this, I'll give it a go, chances are it'll work. So a bit of life advice there, really, based on dog training. If you go through life saying to yourself, I'll give it a go, I'll try my best. It's not always going to be easy. Sometimes things go wrong, you're going to try again. But if you've got that attitude, yeah, I'll give it a go, it'll probably work in the end. There you go. Florence.
Do you have a favourite breed of dog?
Well, you see, that's very good. That's a different question. I am a bit biased, it has to be said. I used to have those Rottweilers I mentioned, those two Rotties, and I've never had a Rottie since. Now, currently, we've got a 16-year-old Patterdale who's blind. We've got a 12-and-a-half-year-old Boxer who's deaf. They've gone blind and deaf in their old age, respectively, bless them. And we've got, well, a mixed breed dog called Johnny, who you would look at and say, he's kind of collie sized, but big and fluffy. And I thought he might be a cross between maybe a collie and a German Shepherd or something. We had a DNA test done. There's about 20 breeds in there. But the main breed is Staffy. So Amelia will be very pleased to hear about that. So, because Max is a Staffy, of course. But the second breed, get this, Chihuahua. A Staffy and a Chihuahua. You can't imagine it, can you? And there's lots of other breeds as well. And he's lovely. So I'm going to answer your question in two ways. If you really push me and said, favourite breed, I do have a soft spot for Rottweilers. So every time I see a Rottweiler in the street, I'm like, oh, a Rottie. You know, so, and I am that daft person who's like, is it all right to say hello? You know, invariably they're fine. Oh, can I give them a cuddle? So, so they're just, you know, a special place in my heart for Rottweilers. The other answer to the question is, quite often my favourite breed is the one I just worked with yesterday, because I just, you know, I fall in love with different dogs on a weekly basis, you know. And there's some dogs, well, like, look at Johnny, for example, you know, I think there's about 20 breeds in there somewhere, but the big two are Staffy and Chihuahua. But if you said to me, oh, well, there'll be a Staffy Chihuahua that has a special place in your heart, I'd be like, oh, what? So, they're all individual, is the answer to that. And it's a bit like people were saying it before, you know, in the same way that you can't say all people from, let's imagine this, all people from Liverpool are bad, all people from Manchester are good. Can you imagine that? Of course that's not true. There's good and bad people everywhere you go. It's a bit like that with dog breeds. I wouldn't say good and bad for dogs, but you're going to find really tricky, badly behaved Rottweilers, and you're going to find really lovely ones as well. So the answer to the question is, the simple answer is Rottweilers, and the complicated answer is they're all individuals, really, a bit like humans.
Most of the time when people answer questions like that, they say they can't choose because it's like choosing between their children. But I'm glad that you're just honest and straight up. People pretend like they don't, but then they do.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think we all have our biases, right? We all like to pretend that we haven't, right? What you do about that bias is the important thing, okay? So here's the thing. It's okay for me to say, look, really, if I had to choose, my favourite breed would be Rottweiler because there's a special place in my heart for a Rottweiler. That doesn't mean, though, that if somebody came to me with a Jack Russell, a very different kind of dog, that I wouldn't do the best job I possibly could. Of course I would. So so even though I've got my own little favourites, to be a professional person, and whether you're a dog trainer or a vet or a doctor or whatever, you always do the best you possibly can, regardless of the breed. So it's okay to have your own sort of favourites or biases, if you like. But where it goes wrong is if you allow that to change the way you treat dogs and people. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you have any experiences with other animals like cats, maybe cats and dogs that live together?
Yeah, good question. People kind of assume because I'm me, that dog fella off the telly, the Dogfather, that I don't like cats. And I love cats. I've never, well, I've sort of like a lot of people. Although I've never owned a cat, I've had a cat adopt me. So a couple of times in life where a cat has come round the house and gone, I think I'll live here half my life. Oh, okay. And so I get on really well with cats. The thing with cats is you can't kind of you can't tell them what to do, can you? In terms of obedience training, they just do their own thing, which I kind of admire. So getting dogs and cats to get on together is something that I've dealt with a lot over the years because it's quite a common problem. Look, we had an old cat, we got a dog, they're not getting on. It's all gone horribly wrong. Can you help? Or another familiar story is boy meets girl. Boy's got dog, girl's got cat, or vice versa, or boy meets boy, girl meets girl, of course. They get together as a relationship, and guess what? The animals don't get on. So, can you help us out? The answer to getting them to get on well is more down to the cat than the dog, I've got to say. If you've got a cat that's a bit of a scaredy cat that runs a mile every time they see the dog, that's really hard. Because most dogs' instinct is to chase, and then it just goes wrong. But if you've got a cat who stands their ground, the kind of cat who just stands there and hisses and arches their back and goes, I wouldn't mess with me if I were you. Most dogs, even really, really big dogs, you can have a Rottie or a Newfie or something like that. They just look at the cat and go, oh no, I'm not messing with you. And then that's usually harmony in the house because everybody knows where they stand. But other animals, my other half is into horses, so kind of later in life I've got used to horses. So I can ride a little bit. I'm very much a beginner, but I get horses and they seem to get me. So and a lot of similar things apply. If you go up to a horse that doesn't know you and you put your hand out and go to stroke them on the nose like that, they're probably going to shy away. Because they're like, who the heck are you? You're very forward. But if you just go up and kind of hang with them for a sec, they come and check you out, and maybe you get to stroke them on the neck or something. And before you know it, you're friends. There might be a life lesson in that as well. Don't try too hard sometimes. We're all animals. See, that's the interesting thing. We talk about animals like we're not, of course, but we're all animals. And the way I see animals interacting with each other and when they make friends and all the rest of it, I think, yeah, there's a lot to learn there,
It's not so different with humans making friends with animals.
Florence, you look like you're dying to ask a question.
Yes, I am. What would you say are some common problems in behaviour that you get called for? And what are some mistakes that their owners have made to contribute to that problem?
Yeah, great question. So there's two questions there, in effect, aren't there? What are the common behaviour problems with dogs, and what are the common behaviour problems with owners? Is basically what you're asking, isn't it? In a way. So let's split it up. Most dog behaviour problems, as humans would see it, of course. And the reason I'm saying that is the dogs wouldn't necessarily say it was a problem because they're just being dogs, some of them. But most common behaviour problems revolve around too much excitement. Okay, so it might be, for example, a dog that barks too much, maybe because they're excited when people come in the house or something like that, or they might be barking for attention, or they might be barking because somebody passes by the house, right? So if they can see out the front window, this was the problem in St Helens, by the way, Florence, recently. Dog who barks at the bay window, people go walking past, dog keeps barking, people disappear from view. Dog says, I'm clever. I got rid of them. Right? Now, you and I would go, no, hang on a minute. No, 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 no. They were on the way to the co-op. Right? You didn't get rid of them. In a minute, they'll probably come back again. And the dog will say, yeah, and I'll get rid of them again. He's like, no, 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 you're not getting rid of them. They were going anyway. But the dog says, no, no, look, I bark. There you go. What part of that don't you understand? You see what I mean? So barking of different kinds is a common problem. Could be barking for attention, right? So people sat around the table, dog's barking his head off because he wants food or wants attention. Dog's pulling on a lead, dog's not coming back when called. Pulling on the lead, too excited, because they want to get to the park, or they want to. Some dogs are scared outside, very nervous, bless them. They're desperate to get home, so they pull more on the way home. Dogs who don't want to come back when called, well, because they're having a great time out there. Why would they come back, right? Too excited. Most dog behaviour problems, not all, but most, are too much excitement of different kinds. Even dogs that are suffering from separation anxiety. So in other words, they're on their own in the house and the people have left and the dog's just really upset and, crying and maybe scrabbling at the floor and stuff. Even those things, that's not a calm dog, is it? So interestingly, most dog behaviour problems are different kinds of excitement, right? Probably 90%. However, the way we praise good behaviour is often where we go wrong. So we're now moving into the human behaviour here, right? So in the English-speaking world, and I've seen this in the UK, in Australia, it certainly happens in America as well, we tend to use very excited kinds of praise, right? So the typical way to praise a dog, if I said to most people, how would you say good boy to your dog? They say, oh, good boy, yay, good boy, good job, and all of that, yeah? So here's the thing. If you've got a problem with the dog being too excited, what's the opposite of excitement? Well, calm, maybe. So if, let's say a dog is barking too much, when he's quiet, we ought to thank him for being quiet and tell him that's good, yeah? So if we thank him by saying good boy, but we thank him for being calm, but we're excited ourselves, there's a mismatch there, isn't there? It's a problem. So that's where we often go wrong. So the dog goes, rah, 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 and eventually he stops, rah, 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 yeah, it's coming. Yeah. Right? Either the people forget to praise the dog when they're good, classic, right? Or they praise the dog in an excited way. So the dog's now calmed down. He's like, all right, I'll give it up, right? And instead of going, oh, good boy, oh, that's nice. Yeah, you hear my voice there, right? So, and the movement would be, if I'm stroking, it'd be really slow. Oh, good boy, that's nice, that's lovely. Dog goes, oh, okay, yeah, I'll stay calm, right? Instead of that, what we often do is we go, oh, good boy, yeah, woo, there you go. And then he's like, rat, 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 because he got excited again. Yeah? So here's my golden rule. If you're trying to reward a calm behaviour by praising a dog, always praise them calmly. Pretty obvious, really. Calm behaviour, praise, right? Now, there are times when you want excited behaviour. So, I mentioned a dog not coming back, recall. So you've called them and they're the other side of the field going, nah, shan't, right? So if you call them and they do come back, yeah, and they're running back towards you, the ears are flapping and you've got a treat ready, by all means be excited then, because we want them to be excited to come back. You see what I mean? So if the desired behaviour is excited behaviour, we want them to run quickly, we should praise them in an excited way. Because that's when you could be too calm. Your dog's running back, all pleased to see you, can't wait to get there, and we're stood there. This is typically fellas do this, blokes do this, right? Oi, Fido, come here. How boring is that? You wouldn't want to run back to that fella, would you? So it's like, Fido, come, yeah, good boy, yeah, woo, So if you want excitement, be excited, and if you want calmness, reward it with calmness. It's kind of obvious, really, but it's not usually what people do. There you go.
Sometimes when I'm with my dog, he's just very cute, so I just praise him for existing. Can that cause can that cause issues with dog behaviour if they're being praised too often for not doing anything?
Well, all I would say is it sounds to me like that'd be absolutely fine, but it depends on your definition of cute, of course. So if he's just sat there going, like this and being lovely as they do. That dog of mine, Johnny, by the way, he's like that. He's just like, he's great. He just sits there sometimes and he's like, I love you. And I'm like, oh, I
Oh.
love you. I know, it's nice, isn't it? So why would you not praise him for just existing? Because he's like, that's fine. The question you have to ask yourself is always, at this moment in time, what's my dog doing? Are they doing something I want to see more of? Yes. Well, you can praise them as much as you like, right? However, if your definition of cute, Emily, was, well, he's eating me slippers, stroke chewing on the table, the leg of the table, right? Stroke, I don't know, chewing on a power cable. God, can you imagine, right? But looking really cute at the same time. Then we definitely wouldn't be praising them for that, would we? So you've just got to say, right, cute, fine. Praise them for existing, absolutely. Often where people go wrong, actually, is they think they have to train a dog to do something before they praise them, like sit or down or something like that, stay, whatever. Those things are great, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to wait until the dog does something that you've trained them to do, like an obedience thing. You can praise anything you want more of. And that's probably the single best bit of advice I could give anybody starting out in dog training. Always praise something that you want to see more of. There you go. So I reckon you're on the right track there, Emily Penman. Well done.
What is your opinion on the rising number of dogs in rescue centres and shelters?
Yeah, it's obviously bad news, isn't it? I think I think people should be rescuing dogs a lot more. I've done both things, right? The two Rossies I mentioned, I got those both as puppies. The three dogs we've got now, but I should add we're my partner's dog before we got together. But one of them, the boxer, he was a puppy 12 years ago. Got him as a puppy. The other two were rescues. Came from the Dogs Trust, I think. So rescuing a dog's a great thing, and yeah, sure. Sometimes you've got to put a little bit more work in. Sometimes they come with a problem or two. Sometimes you hit really lucky with a rescue dog, and you just get a perfect dog. Even though they've had a life. And I think the other thing is that often people are scared to take on a dog that's a bit older. Because they think, oh well, I won't have so many years with this one. But old dogs are great. I mean, our three, they're different breeds, but a 16-year-old Patterdale's getting on a bit. So is Johnny at his age. He's 14. The boxer's 12 and a half. That's old for a boxer, But I mean, they're just really calm. You take them for a walk. They just chill out. They don't need loads of walking, and they're just happy to be around. They just every day that comes, they're fine. So it's a different kind of thing. So great thing to rehome a dog. What I would say is I'm never judgmental. If people want to get a puppy, that's fine by me too. I think that for different people that can be the right thing. I wouldn't say it's wrong to get a puppy from a breeder, but I would say, yeah, think about a rehome dog, because it's a lovely thing that you're doing. So there you go. So, and I do think as well, there is a tendency perhaps to, we live in a bit of a throwaway society, don't we? I've had this iPhone for 2 years. It's not the latest model. I get rid of it, And I think some people maybe think a bit like that with dogs. First time they hit a problem, it's like, this is no good. This isn't what I signed up for. It's going to be a bit hard work. Let's get rid of this dog, And of course that isn't the way it should be. So I think probably, Florence, for all those reasons, we've got lots of dogs in rehome. So yeah, hopefully we can turn that around.
When people adopt dogs from those kinds of rescue centres, and they kind of have the process of they check the house and they make sure it's the appropriate place for a dog to go.
Yep.
With adopting puppies, do you think the same process should happen to kind of prevent this from happening, for people to kind of not irresponsibly, because I don't want to call people irresponsible, but adopting a dog when they're not prepared in their house isn't.
Yeah, good point. Well, a lot of breeders do that, a lot of breeders will do a home visit and just check out the place, and I mean, if you are getting a puppy from a breeder, whether that's a kennel club breeder for the purebred dogs, the pedigree dogs, or sometimes for the crossbreeds, cockapoos spring to mind, labradoodles, that they wouldn't be kennel club because they're a mixed breed. Good breeders will grill you when you go to ask for a puppy. If it feels like you're being interviewed as a suitable candidate to have one of their puppies, then that's a good thing, right? And a lot of those breeders will do a home visit as well. So I think it's a good thing. The problem really ain't so much responsible breeders and the rescue centres out there that are really good. It's the irresponsible breeders who are just breeding to make a fast buck, to be honest. They don't really care about breeding for good health, because the really clever breeders are looking at, the mother and father and going, right, if I put these two together, we're going to get a dog with really good health, and if there's a health issue with one dog, as good looking as that dog might be, we might choose not to breed from them because we don't want that health issue to go further down the line, right? So the good breeders are thinking about all of those things. Bad breeders are just looking at the situation and going, how much money can I make out of this? That's where it goes wrong. And you see that actually at both ends of the scale. So cute little dogs, because people are just desperate for a cute little fluffy thing, but also big scary dogs, and dare I say XL bully spring to mind. We know that there are and I should, before I go on, there are lots of good people out there who've got a very large American bully or an XL bully. They're good people. I met somebody in Liverpool recently with one who looked as scary as you like, but she was a lovely person. The dog was as soft as you like. It was a lovely dog. But there are people out there that are breeding dogs to be vicious. They're getting a dog whose tendency is to be quite aggressive, breeding that with another dog the same, and you end up with a litter of puppies that you sell to people who just want an ego dog. Do you know what I mean? So that's really the problem. And how you change that, I think, is very difficult, because sure, you can put laws in, but you've got to catch people. You've got to do something with it, and then who's going to police it? Because it seems to me there aren't enough police officers in the country as it stands. So I don't know what the answers are to all of those things, but certainly for the vast majority of dog owners who are good people, who want to look after a dog and love them, all I would say is, if you go to a breeder or a rescue organisation and it feels as though you're being put through the mill, it feels as though you're being interviewed for a very important job, well, guess what? You are. So that's fine. Suck it up.
On your website, it says that you've worked with 5,114 dogs, but that was last updated on the 17th of March 2020. Do you have any idea of what the current is?
Very good. Well spotted. So I like you've done your research. That's very good. The answer for that, in my defence, is I last updated it when there was a lockdown on, you might remember, and I had time to do it. And since then, I just haven't got around to it. I've lost count is the answer. Since then, I have done some private one-to-ones, not long after we got going with the lockdowns. And I did a few for free with people on Zoom back in the day, just to help people out in lockdown, But it's mainly been television production. So let me try and work this out off the top of my head. We produced a series at the tail end of 2020 when we were all still in lockdown. We had to keep 2 meters away from each other and all of that. We did one in 21, did one in 22. So that's 1, 2, 3 series in the UK. I've done a series in Australia, and we're halfway through a series here. So what's that? 4.5 series. Each one of those was, well, they vary, but mainly it was 15 episodes. The Aussie one was 8. So I must have done about, hang on, I'm working this out. We had 1, 2, 3, 45, and then 8 in Oz is 52. Let's say we're halfway through this one. So we've done about 60 episodes, and on each episode, there was 3 stories. Well done. Well now, Florence. 3 stories. Now, some of those stories are more than one dog, of course. Yeah, by definition, they're never less than one. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a program. But sometimes people have 2 dogs or more. And I went to see a lady recently who had 6 sausage dogs. Um, so that's 60 times 3 per ep, isn't it? 60 times 3 is 180, isn't it? I think, girls. And let's say I would think about half of those were a couple of dogs, and some were more than that. So 180. If we added on 250, yeah, and then there's private 1-to-1s. We've probably done. I probably added 300-400 dogs onto that total. I would have thought since then, Florence. That's about the thing. The thing is, in television production, actually, I'm not seeing as many dogs as I used to when I was doing private 1-to-1s. You know, because making television is a very long process. I don't actually get to see as many people in a week, but there you go. So we must be over 5,500, probably heading towards 6,000, I think, by now. There you
go. How can you help people to be better dog owners, and do you have any advice of what to do and what not to do?
Good question. Well, I think the first thing is, if you're new to dogs and you're thinking of getting a dog, ask yourself some pretty tough questions is the first thing. This is before you've even got one, right? So can you afford it? Because they do cost a bit of money. And I don't mean just to buy one or give a donation to a rescue centre. That's the tip of the iceberg, because you then need to be putting a bit of money aside for perhaps health insurance or paying the vet bills as they come, if you can afford to do that. And it's going to be thousands of pounds over that dog's lifetime, you know. Also food. If you've just fallen in love with a Great Dane, but you own a tiny little car, I've got news for you. You're going to have to find an upgraded car, aren't you? A bigger car. So can you afford it? Have you got the time? My mum and dad, as I say, their judgment back in the day was, we haven't got the time really to do a dog justice, so it wouldn't be fair. So that was the main reason. Are you picking the right breed for you, or the right dog as an individual for you? So, for example, if you're a retired person and you've slowed down a bit these days, you probably don't want a really young border collie. It's going to run you ragged. It's just not a match made in heaven, is it? But if you're a young person who loves running, and you're out, you know, running for an hour every day, you're training for a marathon, guess what? Perfect dog for you, you know. So think about all of those things. That's the first thing. So is a dog right for you? And if it is, what's the right dog for you? Okay. Second thing, we've got your dog, and you need to know how to train it. Some really simple advice here. If you look at the psychology behind how all animals work, including the human animal, there are 2 rules that were first written about in 1905 and really haven't changed since. So this is something called Thorndike's law of effect. And it's dead simple. When you put it into plain English, it means this. Any behavior that feels rewarding will increase. Okay. So if we do something that feels good, we're going to do it again, aren't we? Right. So let's take a simple example. So you're interviewing me now. If this turns out to be a good experience for you, I hope it is, you might well think about doing something like this in future, right? Maybe you'll even become a journalist, who knows, right? So any behavior that feels good, is rewarding, will increase. Same with dogs, right? So we talked about this earlier. If we had a barky dog and he goes quiet, instead of like forgetting to say anything or they fall off the radar, it's really important to say, oh, good boy, good girl, yeah? The opposite is also true. And this is where we've got to be careful. Any behavior that feels uncomfortable or unattractive will diminish. So if you do something and you think, ooh, I wish I hadn't done that, I didn't like that outcome, you're probably not going to do it so much again, are you? So there are times when we all need to be told that, no, you've got it wrong. Right. So we're not talking about being nasty or bullying or doing anything that's painful or anything like that. But, you know, if you break a rule at home, you know, that thing where your parents go, no, yeah, or even, I am very disappointed in you. Right. That's a consequence, isn't it? So if you do something and you get caught out in this example, right, the result is it feels bad. And if it feels bad, you're probably not going to do it again. For grown-ups, it's more about things like speed cameras is a good example I often give. Drivers don't like to admit it, but speed cameras do work. They slow people down, which is obviously what the authorities wanted. You don't want to be driving along and discover that you've just got yourself a speeding fine. So people change their behaviour, they slow down to avoid the discomfort. You see what I mean? So to come back to your question, Florence, the best advice for anybody with a dog, or indeed another human, right, is make sure you make the good behaviors feel good, and then you'll get more of them. And think about an appropriate way of making unwanted behaviors unattractive without doing anything nasty. And if you do those things, you're on the right track. And just a last note on that: if the behavior is attention seeking, sometimes just ignoring that attention seeking is enough. That you don't need to do any more than that. So I'm always thinking, what's the behavior I've got? Do I want to encourage this, or do I want to discourage this? And everything you see me doing on the telly is based around that, really. So and then you see how quickly sometimes you get the results, because the dog, sometimes the light bulb switches on. It's like, all right, okay, I won't do that anymore, I'll just do this instead. Right, yeah, do that, thank you very much. Smile for the camera. Oh, I think you're muted, Emily. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
You're on.
Usually the dogs do want to do what's best, but they just don't understand how to go about doing that.
That's often the way. That you're dead right. And often it's not what you think. I mean, there was one of my favourite stories from dogs behaving very badly over the last few years. You may have seen this. It was a border collie called Thor, and everybody said he was looking in the mirror or looking in glass reflections at himself, and he was obsessed with doing it. And the lady who owned him, young couple, she was really upset because she's like, I know I've done this to my dog, but I don't know how to fix it. Actually, he wasn't looking at himself at all. When I looked at it really carefully, he was kind of looking at an angle. So he was actually although he was looking in the reflection, he was looking at them. Yeah. And it was a form of attention seeking, because if he went up and stared at them, they know that border collies often stare at sheep to get them to move. So it was game on. So they were wise to that. So if he went and stared directly at them, he would get nothing for it. But if he stared in the mirror, they were like, oh, darling, come here. So once I'd realised that was the case, we just had to ignore him. And then all we had to discover then, that's half the job, right? So don't look at the reflection, because it's not going to work anymore. That's half a job, isn't it? The other half of the job is telling him what to do instead. Yeah. So when he approached them, and he was just being lovely and calm, like you described your dog, Emily, being really cute and getting fuss for it, right? Then he got love for it, and they'd invite him up on the sofa, and he'd just settle down and have a cuddle. So that's a good example of what you're saying, where we've got a dog who's saying, I just want to know what you want me to do here. So, and it was really simple in the end. Once the penny dropped, it's like, just be lovely, be yourself, calm down, come here and have a cuddle, and we'll love you for it. He's like, oh, I can do that. That's dead simple. All you have to do is tell me. And that's why you get those quick moments where you can see a dog go, right, dead easy. Because dogs like things to be clear. It's like, don't do that, do this.
I think I've only got 2 last questions, if that is okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's not too long on time or anything.
No, crack on, it'll be fine.
All right. Florence, have you got any?
I'm out.
Oh, okay.
You're out. Blimey. You asked very good questions, Florence. So crack on, Emily.
Sorry. I was wondering if you preferred training dogs on television or doing private sessions.
Oh, that's a good question. That's never been asked before. Well done. Telly's interesting because it's a really it's a sort of brain training game for a person, right? Because there's 2 jobs going on when you're doing that on the telly. One is training the dog, and one is telling the story in a way that works on telly, right? So let me give you an example. They have a phrase on telly which is, if the camera didn't see it, it didn't happen, right? So if I say, for example, oh, that's good, his tail's wagging now, right? I know they're going to need a shot of this dog's tail wagging, because when you're watching telly, that's what happens. If you hear somebody say something, there'll be an image of that in a second, right? So as you're doing it, you're constantly going, right, note to self, we need that shot. So I love the telly because it's if you're the sort of person who likes to be kept busy up here, it really does that. It's really tiring at the end of the day, you know, because you've been on the go all the time. So because I'm talking to the people, trying to work out what's going on with the dog, doing the dog training, making sure the camera's in the right angle, or you know, if I'm about to say something which I think might be quite important, I'm going to make sure out the corner of my eye, yeah, the camera's looking at me. Okay, it's time to go. Right, and I love all that, and I quite like live TV. I've discovered as well. You know, I've been on ITV this morning regularly and things like that. So those things are great because there's no chance of doing it again. It's live, you know. So I love all that. However, private one-to-ones are great because I don't have to do all that. I can just knock on the door, come in, and then have a cup of tea and start chatting about the dog. I don't have to worry about, oh, hang on, I've got to wait until the camera's in position, and oh no, the lighting's not right, and all that malarkey, you know. So, so I like them both for different reasons. Is the answer to that? At the moment, I've had to give up doing private one-to-ones at least temporarily because the TV production is just full on. You know, it's all day every day, and often a filming day is, you know, 10 hours plus. You know, often we're filming for 10 hours, then driving for 2 hours. You know, so but actually a private one-to-one's quite refreshing. You know, I'll give you an example. So the first part of a story on the telly, you often see me saying something like, well, let's say, for example, well, today I'm in North Wales, I'm near to Conway, and I'm going to see a young lady who's got a problem with her dog, right? Dog's too cute. Can you imagine, right? Next thing, I'll be knocking on your door. Oh, hello, Graeme, come in. Thank you very much. Follow that. Right, very good. In we go, right? Well, that took about 15 seconds on the telly, right? In practice, the bit in the car, we might have done that 2 or 3 times because just as I got halfway through it, a bus came past or a traffic light went red, we had to come to a stop, or there was a speed bump, all right, do it again, you know. And then, you know, when you see the outside of the car drive past you, yeah, well, obviously, I had to let the guy out. He sets up a tripod. I drive up and down the road till he's got the shot. Go, get back in, mate. Let's go to the house, right? To knock on the door, we probably do it 3 times because you'll see me walk up to the door. Then you'll see maybe a close-up of just my hand going knock, 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 yeah. And then the door opens. It's like, oh, hello, nice to meet you. Very good. In you go, close the door. That probably took an hour. So doing it in real life is quite refreshing sometimes. So it's a really good question. If I had to choose between the two, at the risk of sounding like a proper TV diva, I probably would choose the TV one. And the reason I'm saying that is actually, I know it helps a lot of people at once. If I do a private one-to-one, it helps one person, 1 dog or 2 dogs, whatever. On the telly, I love it when people come up to me in real life and say, oh, we've been watching your program and it's really helped us. Or we saw this particular episode and that's our dog to a T. So I know I mean, there's over 1 million people watch the show live, you know, which is just unbelievable, isn't it? So I'm helping more than one person at a time. So I suppose I would, and that's the thing that drives me, actually. It's like, you know, for all of this, it's not so much about money or me and my ego and bigging myself up. It's like, I want to help people, you know. So that's really why I would say that.
Right, I have another question for you before we go on to Emily's final one.
Yeah.
Some breeds tend to receive lots of bad press paintings, them as vicious, such as like the Staffordshire Bull Terriers. Why do you think that there is all this bad press, and how can we improve the image of these dogs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, as I've said a couple of times, I used to have Rotties there at the time with the devil dog of their era. And you know what? There seems to be a sort of, and I'm saying devil dog in quotation marks here because I don't believe that, but there's a sort of devil dog of each generation, it seems to me. Before Rottweilers, it was German Shepherds, you know, Dobermans took a turn. After Rotties, it was Staffies. I think that's waning a bit now, and the XL Bully seems to be the thing. And I think the reason it happens is that, stupidly, people just like to pigeonhole things, you know. That, bad, this, good. Labrador good, Staffy bad. Yeah. Quite what the heck they think of a Staffy cross Labrador, I don't know. I know what I think. They're lovely. But I think the way you combat it is by giving people really good examples of a dog of that breed who's not what they thought it was going to be. So Max, ambassador for Staffy, great example. There's a lovely dog, and people go, oh, what a lovely dog. He's lovely. Oh, he's a Staffy, by the way. Is he? Oh, I thought they were horrible, nasty dogs. Well, no, guess what? You were wrong. So that's what you do. I think the more, and that's really what got me into dog training, by the way. With those two Rotties, I thought they are potentially scary dogs. Some people have a judgment about them that these are evil dogs, and I'm going to prove to the world that they're not. They're lovely. I know they are. But in order to convince people that, they've got to be really, really well behaved, So they were a good, an ambassador was a word I used to use, actually. They were a good ambassador for the breed, And I think that's how you change perceptions. It's like one person at a time making good impressions, I met a Staffy and he was lovely. And the more people say that, down the cafes, in the pubs, going, I met a Staffy and he was lovely. You go, yeah, Staffies, lovely dogs. Before you know it, you've changed the whole perception, But I think, unfortunately, it's a bit of a never-ending story, because once, the public have moved from one breed to another, then you've got the same job to do with the next breed. But that's human nature, it seems to me.
So my final question, you kind of touched on it earlier and talked about it a bit earlier, but what is kind of some advice that you would have for anyone that wants to do the same things as you do as a dog trainer?
Oh, yeah, no, that's a really good question. Well, watch dogs behaving very badly on the telly for start. That's obvious, isn't it? Do you know what that guy said to me? I think is really good advice. The number of dogs through your hands is important. So that doesn't necessarily mean dog training. So I would look at some kind of qualification to get yourself a basis. Whether that's it could be an online course, could be a course at a college or something like that. But think of that as a start point. So I tell you what I did when I got started, and before I started charging people for anything, was I volunteered at the local rescue centre, and and I went sort of walking their dogs from, because they're always looking for people who volunteer to walk the dogs, because a lot of those dogs, bless them, they're cooped up in the kennels. They get out for a run, in the compound, but they often don't get a chance of a walk. So it may well be that, if you were interested and you said to the local rescue place, can I volunteer? Can I help out? They might be able to help you there. The great thing about that is you're going to get lots of experience of loads of different breeds, breeds that you may never particularly have thought of owning yourself, and all sorts, anything from a Chihuahua to a Great Dane. So, and I learned quite a lot that way, really, just by observing what was going on. So qualification, yes. Experience, yes, and that doesn't have to be, that you're already charging people, because you might well feel that actually, I'm not there yet. So volunteering and all that kind of thing, and then trying little bits out on your own dogs, your friends' dogs, and building it up from there. And I think also have a think about what professionalism means to you. We touched on this before, didn't we? Because you will find yourself going off to a house and thinking, honestly, I'm not really a fan of this breed of dog. We all have those feelings, but we've got to act professionally. So, and you might actually change your mind. I've met dogs. I've walked into dogs going, oh, this ain't going to be my favourite job today. I think this could be hard work. And then you walk through the door and go, oh, he's lovely. He's not what I thought, And I've had the other as well, where you think, it's going to be a piece of cake this today. You walk in the door and think, oh my God, this is going to be a while. So if you're thinking of starting, the bottom line is, yes, by all means, check out qualifications, all of those things. Talk to other dog trainers. Bear in mind, we've all got different ways of doing it. And if you're not being nasty or abusive to a dog, I think there's no right and wrong answer, particularly. We've all got different ways of doing it, and they're all valid, provided we're all being kind, and then get stuck in, volunteer somewhere, get a bit of experience, and the best of British. Before you know it, you could be on the telly. So and on that, very quickly, by the way, the telly found me. I didn't go looking for them. I was just busy doing my job. The reputation sort of spread. I was starting to work nationwide, and then one day the phone rang and they rang me. So you never know where life is going to take you. So be open to all possibilities. That's probably a good way to end things, isn't it?
Well, thank you very much for coming to the interview and talking to us today.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. So, well, listen, I hope you got a lot out of it. Maybe I should interview you for 2 seconds. What are you thinking you might do in future? You sound like a couple of budding journalists potentially. Emily?
I'm undecided.
Oh yeah, good for you.
Very undecided.
Well, I'm still undecided now, but and I'm a bit older than you, so that's not a bad thing. Florence?
I'm hoping on writing books when I get older.
Are you now? Oh, good for you. Well, listen, you asked some really good and very well structured questions, and that's a good help. I've written a couple of books. The third one's on the way, and I've got a children's book on the go as well, which is for kids who are younger than you guys. And it's hard work, but it's very, very rewarding. So good luck with that. Just keep asking good questions. Whether we're talking about a journalist or an author, that's a key skill in life generally. Keep asking good questions. So you learn a lot that way. So no such thing as a silly question, really. So I often, if I'm learning something new with somebody, I'll often start a sentence with, "Can I ask a silly question?" But I don't really mean it, because it might sound silly, but I'm really interested, and you learn loads of things that way. So all the best of luck to you both.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. All the best.